Greetings all and welcome to one of our final little video overviews for the week 9 here. Uh, Ideally you will all, though I know that won't be so, based on a few messages I received, but I hope to have all of your annotated bibliography / literature reviews in by midnight tonight. I believe I said those would be pretty much kind of full scored as is, unless there were significant concerns, which I would alert you to individually and give you opportunity to fix those concerns. But I'm hoping we don't have to do any of that if everything goes as planned. So what I want to talk about is taking everything we've done over these last more than a few weeks and rolling them into your final project. The project proposal, the problem statement, the significance, the assumptions, all of that material, along with your literature review / annotated bibliography, is to now be somewhat rolled into your final project. If you look at the final project expectations online, you'll see something of an outline. More important, well, equally important, there is a link in this final project expectations page to the anatomy of a scholarly article. So we are fundamentally creating a scholarly article of sorts, and of course this format isn't going to apply to every discipline out there, but it will get you going and should work just fine. If you decide that you want to look into a different format, just let me know. One that you think might be more appropriate to the work you're going to do. Those of you, for instance, going into nursing may have a more scientific-y, for lack of a better word, format you want to use. I don't know of one, and I don't think this one that I've provided will be a hindrance at all. But anyway, if you find something better, I'm open to you using that. So if you were to be looking at the page, you'd see that, of course, I want a title for your project. I want all this presented in traditional MLA formatting, so it's double spacing, 1-inch margins, the full header with your name, the class, my last name, the date, a title that indicates the point to be made or addressed, whatever it is, some hint at where things are going. Following the title, though this won't necessarily be the thing you write first, will be an abstract, and this is a couple hundred or so words that provides a very brief overview of your whole project and the questions you went in to examine and what you learned while examining those questions and doing your research, that sort of thing. There'll then be an introduction, and this is where your problem statement, significance of the problem, that material might fit best. I say this is where you describe the problem and why it matters. This is the best place for an anecdote, a story, a brief narrative that puts a human face on your issue as opposed to just dumping a bunch of data on your reader. It always helps if you can connect as a human being. So give that a try, do that. Then you'll want to follow the introductory material with your literature review. That's where you'll take your annotated bibliography and pretty much turn each of those into a summary. I've provided a sample based on the sample literature review entry for the previous step of the assignment. So do something like that. Essentially, you're just going to open with the author's name and the title of the work and give a few sentences rundown on what's in that and why it matters. You can also, I think we can consider this an analytical summary where you get to critique the sources as you summarize them. And so if a source is hugely biased for whatever reason, um, you might want to point that out. I don't, and I guess I need to say that bias in and of itself isn't a bad thing, even though I've tried to keep you from arguing a particular perspective. I mean, we're all biased, so but scholarly work, to the best of our ability, should be, a reasonably unbiased examination of whatever the topic is. So it's not a traditional formal argument where you take a stand and argue for it, but we're examining the ideas. But sometimes, some sources are just highly partisan. I guess that's a better word than biased. And so if something is so partisan, so ideological, I guess I would say, that it ignores certain truths and obvious facts, then you want to call that into account, or at least make mention of it. So you're not just doing a straight summary, but you're doing a summary with a little bit of commentary on it. So you'll do that. After that, you are basically going to engage in a discussion of the issue and what you learned. And so this will build on the literature reviews, and this will be more on what did you learn and why is it valuable. And I think I need to write that down. I'm going to kind of click over here. So, what did you learn? Why is it valuable with regard to it? And I guess, in the outline I've provided, following the literature review, it says results, what was learned, and then the discussion, the discussion of what was learned. So here I learned all these things, and here's why these things matter and what they mean. You're not going to answer all of the questions. You may not answer any questions, and that's fine. There are also areas you might have found areas for further study, or need to dig more deeply into a certain aspect of what you are looking at. Who knows? Usually research uncovers the need to do more research, and all of our work is pretty provisional and tentative, and we're not going to settle anything, and that's perfectly fine. Excuse me. So I apologize for that. So anyhow, that's there. You'll do some kind of a conclusion. In some respects, a conclusion, the area for further study could overlap, could be sort of the same thing. You'll just kind of have to sort of see what you come up with. So so we'll see. When it comes to your literature review, backing up, you've looked at 15 sources, I hope, and you are to use at least 10 of those 15. Should you find any new information and you want to use that, you need to include it in your literature review. For instance, I have a story about the value of higher education, a 4-year degree, that I'm going to send out with my message following this. If those people who are studying higher education and the value of a degree decide to use some of that information, they need to include it in the literature review. So it's not limited to 10, but a minimum of 10. But if you're not using it in your final discussion kind of area, if it's not driving things, you may be able to leave it out. So better to leave literature review material in than to leave it out and potentially end up plagiarizing something somewhere. So kind of a better safe than sorry thing. You will see from the anatomy of a scholarly article that you can include graphs, that sort of thing. I am not a fan of pictures for the sake of pictures. If an image of any sort is used, it has to be in support of the discussion. So thinking, since I mentioned higher education, even though the article that I have a link to has a picture of a student who's graduating and it has their mortarboard on their head and it says hire me and it has a QR scan code on it. That fits with it, but it's more just for visual appeal. It doesn't really advance the argument. So you want images, if you use them, to advance the argument, support the argument, illustrate the point, whatever the case may be. Don't just include them, and don't anticipate that they speak for themselves whenever a graph or image or whatever is provided. The reason it's there has to be explained and articulated for the reader. Don't expect, even though a picture is worth 1,000 words, don't expect it to speak for itself. It's your job to speak for those images that you use. So I think that is it. Oh, yeah, due dates. You know, we have this week, we have next week, we have one technical class day, Monday the 10th of June, but I would like to have all work returned to you by then for any revision that needs to be done. This will be a revised, potentially, piece, and I want to give you time to do that. So to that end, I anticipate the draft to be due Monday the 3rd. Yeah, Monday the 3rd, and responses for the peer review done by the 5th, and then back to me by Friday the 7th, give or take a little bit. Then I'll get them back to you, having read them over the weekend, and you'll have a few days to revise further, should you so desire, and then the quarter's over. So we have technically 3 weeks until the end of finals, counting this week, next week, and the week after. But we want to be pretty, I want you to hand in your paper to me on the 7th. So, and that's getting through some revision. It should be enough time, given that you have the bulk of your information, I hope, collected and analyzed and summarized. And it shouldn't be too daunting of a task, but it will take quite a push. So, and like I said, there will be time to revise. So if it's, you know, I expect the draft submitted next Monday to be imperfect. And, you know, when they get to me that following Friday to be less imperfect, but still imperfect. And then they'll be as good as they can be gotten to be by the time you resubmit. So, so anyhow, hopefully that won't pose too much of a hardship for anybody. So that is it for week 9. I hope you were able to enjoy your weekend, Memorial Day weekend, at least somewhat. So if you have questions, let me know. Remember that the librarian is more than happy to help you with any last-minute research. So get in touch with one of us if you need help, and any kind of help you might want or need, let me know. So take care, have a good week, and I look forward to reading what you write. Bye-bye.